Welcome to Chats with Changemakers, the North East podcast for people who want to make the world a better place. Hi everyone, and welcome to Chats with Changemakers. I'm your host, Kate Duffy, and this is our new Spring to Summer series, so welcome. Today, I've actually just been chatting to Dan Makaveli, and he's a bit of a social entrepreneur who likes to run more than one organisation. So he set up Media Savvy in 2010 and then went on to set up Diego's Joint in 2018. So that's just before the COVID period. Both are based in Sunderland, and they aim to provide both the space and learning opportunities for people to reach their full potential. So let's go straight to the interview. Hi, everybody. Today I have got the wonderful Dan Makaveli joining us from Media Savvy CIC. So welcome, Dan.
Hi, Kate. Lovely to see you.
Awesome. So we're going to jump straight in here then, Dan. Tell us about your social enterprise. You're running a kick. Where did that come from?
I feel a bit not not appropriately dressed because I've got the branding on from our second CIC, which out of Media Savvy, but we'll get to that, I'm sure.
Okay.
So Media Savvy, being as far as, well, if we think about legal statuses, as far as community interest companies go, we were founded in 2010, and as far as I'm aware, we were one of the very early kicks around in the North East and definitely in Sunderland. And basically, the whistle-stop version is I was collaborating with the person that became a co-founder with me, Mark, on a creative project, because we're both from creative backgrounds, and it had the project itself had a lot of purpose to it. It was socially driven. It was working with young people. It was working with creative arts and media. We got a lot out of it. We were both working as sole traders. We'd both come from different but relatively equally deprived kind of backgrounds and upbringings, especially geographically, and just kind of always had something in us that we wanted to do more and show people with similar backgrounds to us that you can actually achieve things and do things, and you don't have to be capped. That's a real whistle-stop version of we fell into a project that then went on to be quite high achieving in terms of what the client, which was a school, what they got out of it. And then a few months down the line, Media Savvy CIC was born, basically just off the idea. So we sort of fell into it, but it was due to something that was kind of a underlying motivating factor for both of us, alongside the kind of commercial initiatives that we were going as early entrepreneurs, just doing sole trader work.
Amazing. So what is the mission then of Media Savvy CIC?
Here we go. Look, we've actually got a real mission, but it's like typically my brain, it's
I'm not sure looking for it.
I'm not sure when this is going out, but it is the 31st of March, 2025 when we're talking here. So there's lots of year-end stuff going on, and my brain is a bit mushy. But we do have a written mission and vision. But in general, just that, like from the heart, it's to empower individuals and marginalised individuals, especially with largely facing multiple and complex barriers, and doing that through creativity and education, and just empowering them to get the best progression that they can get, and what is good for them. It doesn't necessarily mean going into a long-term 30, 40-year career, earning X as a salary. It could just mean maintaining a level of well-being and not being hospitalized on a regular basis. It changes from individual to individual. And if we can do that through our interventions, then that's fantastic. And over the years, we've worked with literally thousands of individuals doing thousands of accredited and non-accredited courses and workshops around digital skills, creative arts, and digital creative art and media, and also health, nutrition, fitness, and well-being, which doesn't do what it says on the tin as far as the title of the organization. And then as a side, so something we've grown in the last post-COVID, really, we've grown a bit more. What we've always done is had a commercial arm to the business. Because yeah, we're all not for profits in this game, voluntary sector game. But as we understand, we've got to make a profit to survive. It's just what we do with it, obviously. So the commercial work that we do along the lines of web designs, animations, videography, branding, graphic design, almost anything that you can think towards when it comes to creativity, art, digital. We do it commercially. We've got the in-house expertise and skill in the staff team, and we work with commercial clients to that end. And any profit that we get from that, it just goes back into our social purpose. And for, just as a tangible example, it might go to running a series of workshops to fund a series of workshops for us to run for a group that we couldn't find any grant funding for or any tender opportunities for to hit them. So we sort of justify that, or I justify that in a way that, well, we've made some profit there, so we'll self-fund this area to go towards our overall vision, mission, and values as an organization.
It sounds amazing, and I'm a little bit awestruck with the fact that that sounds a lot. You're working with thousands of people already, but in your intro section, you've mentioned Diego's Joint. So that is a second CIC that you've set up and that you're running. So let's flip into that one. Tell us about Diego's Joint.
So when in 2018, so we've delivered a lot of work across the region and some national work, but our primary area is Sunderland and South Tyneside, and we've always been Sunderland based. And in 2018, we were formed in 2010. In 2018, we moved out of our managed office space over in St. Peter's. It was supported, like it was university offshoot office space, but we were still paid our rent. And we got our own premises in Sunnyside in the city centre of Sunderland. It's a couple of rundown old buildings. One used to be a doctor's surgery, and one was an old office for a charity that was no longer. And basically over the period of a couple of years, and then COVID came and stuck its head in and interfered a little bit. But we renovated the buildings, etc. And there was just an opportunity, let's say, without going into all the details, to do something more, especially with the ground floor, because we've got a lovely area outside of gardens, and a lot of people that don't know Sunderland too well area and say, "Oh, I didn't know Sunderland had an area this nice." So it is quite nice, especially in the summer. And just it was a perfect opportunity to do something, and that's why Diego's Joint was launched. And what we are is sort of a coffee shop and a bar. We specialize in craft beers as a bar, and we host events. But alongside of that, we're very much a social enterprise, and in terms of the products we source, the materials that we use for most of the renovations were sourced through other CICs, etc. There's lots of stuff to go into there, but we're also classed as we're disability friendly. We're a safe space. We have lots of groups of organizations that come and use our space because their clients that might have learning disabilities or a range of neurodiversity in their cohorts. They keep coming back to us because they like this place. They feel safe. They don't feel intimidated anywhere. It's just friendly. It's the type of place where all the staff know the regulars' names, and we've just kind of fostered that culture and identity, which we did earlier with Media Savvy, which is kind of it's something that's easy to lose, but difficult to gain in many ways. Something
and it's a pretty cool place as well. I mean, so I've been there as an attendee of a training course there, and it's a cool place to spend some time. I think community centres have absolutely got their place, but the modern approach that you've got within Diego's Joint is it's nice. It's nice to be there. It feels quirky. I love all the artwork on the walls, and the fact that the beers are, you'll be sat there in the daytime thinking, maybe I should come back here in the evening because this looks pretty good. So yeah, and it had a really nice feel to it when we were doing the training, because it was a creative space, because of the artwork as well. So I can see why it's a really, really successful
Well, I
place.
really appreciate that, those kind words. And actually, as I speak right now, we've got our digital drop-in downstairs, which was
Nice.
funded, but the funding ran out and we've continued to run it at our cost. We've
Mhm.
got a tutor in there now that and there's people actually traveling up now from Darlington from another CIC to come and get some support on their social media content creation for free by our experts in-house and enjoy a nice coffee at the same time. So
Mhm.
that's just an example of something that's going on right now that is again at our cost. It was originally funded, but it's at our cost at the moment because it's part of our values as Diego's joint and Media Savvy working together.
So that really is quite a lot then. So it isn't like you've got one really big social enterprise and a little nice sort of hobby activity on the side. This is two really substantial businesses that are running. How are you
Yes.
splitting your time between that? Because I know recently we've been talking a lot about different business structures with people, and people are realizing that actually sometimes your ideas span multiple businesses and multiple different legal structures. So how are you managing the headspace of that, two very different businesses?
Well, it was. I knew it was going to be a bit of a minefield moving from one sector that I knew quite well to another, well, still voluntary sector, but from sort of digital and training to hospitality focused. It's a big jump. I've got no background in hospitality. I've just got a background in kind of being a inverted commas social entrepreneur and just getting stuff done. So over the years, there'd have been sort of twofold question. I think you've got that. So over the years, there've been lots of opportunities. Should we maybe branch off and become a charity or a CIO, or maybe should for the commercial work should we just have a limited company? And it was all too complicated really, and it was like no, actually it neatly fits in the as a CIC, and that's the one. We'll just keep it and not overcomplicate it with everything else. But the thing that did, it was we ran Diego's joint as an arm of Media Savvy, so he could get the support, etc., and have time to evolve for
Mm-hmm.
a couple of years. But it was always going to branch out and become its own thing. But
Interesting.
it's just far too big. I mean, as an arm of as an existing CIC, it was already bigger than nearly every other local CIC that I
Mm-hmm.
know, but it was just part of another one. So it just seemed to be, well, it was the right thing to do, and it was a natural thing to do. And then thankfully, because of the staff team and culture that we've got here and understanding, some of the staff have sort of slightly hybrid roles working across both. But even so, even the ones that don't, there's a very helpful a sort of culture and collaborative culture of like chipping in to help out, even though it's very different things at times. And yeah, and I just have to try and kind of manage and oversee that. But in terms of managing time, I don't take any. I don't take for the last few years. Well, I've never taken any wage or salary from Diego's joint, and I haven't taken anything from Media Savvy for over 2 years now. So to supplement my own income, I work full time for the university as a program leader.
Wow.
For media production program, and I do bits of freelance stuff alongside that. But you know what? As though it sounds impossible and challenging, especially with a young child, but it's really not. And sometimes it frustrates me when you see people largely just I'll throw a wide thing over this because then it's not name pulling anybody out, but there's a lot of people maybe they've been stuck in jobs in the public sector and you think and now look at what they do and they complain about how hard they work and think your full job is is about 20% of one of my three full-time roles and it's still too much for you, but it's something I do on a Friday afternoon every fortnight to keep on top of that. But really I think it's don't get me wrong, it's not easy, and you do miss things here and there because of it. But if you've got a solid team around you and you've got passion and drive for all the different areas, um, I personally thrive on being able to. I can't get my head in media savvy stuff today, so I'm going to jump and catch up on my uni stuff, or vice versa, and do that. And it works. It works for me. It won't work forever, but it works right now.
Mm-hmm. That's interesting. And You've mentioned a couple of different things there that, I mean, I think we could talk for hours about your experiences. But one thing that you've mentioned a couple of times there is culture, passion, drive. So, what is it that's driving you here? Do you have a personal mission yourself, or is it just you enjoy the thrill of having all of these balls to keep up in the air, or what drives you?
I don't. What drives me? That's a good one. Um, a few things. So I'm driven by the responsibility I have for our team and our staff.
Mhm.
So there's a couple of times in the last few years where things are things were getting really tricky from a business point of view, and it would have been the easiest thing for my well-being and just mental state to just call it a day with,
Mhm.
for example, Media Savvy. But I feel a really deep commitment to our staff team as well as our beneficiaries and sort of service users, some of whom have been with us for the best part of a decade now, still benefiting from us, even though we haven't had any financial sort of rewards or remuneration for work with them for like 8, 10 years. But that's not we're not going to suddenly close the doors, say you've had enough out of us now.
Mhm.
So there's that kind of loyalty and commitment to those two factions that is a big driving factor. Um, I guess more recently, just to see, especially with the Diego's joint side as well as the Media Savvy side, just to see the transformation in the city, in Sunderland over the last few years and what's yet to come in the
Mhm.
wider city and also in the area where we are in Sunnyside. There's lots of developments and I would, guess it's that kind of FOMO thing, as if we just come to a natural end, just as everything was taken off, but everything's always on the verge of taking off. But that's more of an added thing that there's something around the corner, and it will get easier at some point, and well, touch wood, everything points towards it getting easier at some point, even though it's tricky when you feel like you're the entity and the force driving everything forward for the rising up of a whole area
Mhm.
to get something started. Like the analogy that's made constantly with Sunnyside is like a Newsburn or a Northern Quarter, but in the very embryonic phase. And it's just like us saying, come on, give us a hand. There's a
Yeah.
few other organizations local, like Poprex, that many people have heard of, but they're a little bit further away. But in our area, it's very much on us. And
Mhm.
there's other organizations, the council help here and there, the Sunderland bid help, there's consultancy organizations, but it sometimes feels like you're just kind of fighting these battles solo a lot of the time. But we want to see it to the end, and hopefully the end is long into the future. So that's a driving factor as well, just to
Mhm.
know what could be possible along the lines. And the one actually really important thing that I didn't mention, on the one of the reasons behind one of the core reasons behind starting Diego's joint. Yeah, we saw the opportunity for the space, etc. But ultimately, we'd worked with individuals through Media Savvy for many, many years who we'd seen progress from doing really entry level basic stuff to being really thriving, getting qualifications, doing volunteering work, doing paid work for us on as freelancers and things like that, and just really being ready to move on in their lives because they've had a blip for might be 6 months, it might be a decade, but they've had
Mhm.
a blip, but they're out of that now, and they've proven it, or they've proven it to us and others. But when they've been trying to get back into employment, as soon as a potential employer or the HR department sees that CV and the massive gap, or the fact that they've had spent some time at Her Majesty's pleasure, or whatever it is, there might have been something about being sectioned at some point, whatever's in there, even if it was years ago, that risk factor and I can understand it totally, like devil's advocate, um, that risk factor is really high, especially for a SME. And employers openly told me when we'd wrote countless letters of recommendation and references for people, only, and not just willy-nilly, only those that we genuinely
Mhm.
thought you're totally ready now. And the narrative would come back that, yeah, the person you put forward was really good, really suitable for the job, and actually interviewed the best, but we just had to go with the lower risk option. So it's really frustrating for us, but more so for those individuals.
Mm.
But this is the one thing we haven't fully done yet. We've got a couple of examples of it, but we at Diego's Joint, what we want to do is as create some in-house employability specific programs, and it can be things that linked towards, it could be barista training, it could be more transferable things like first aid or just customer service, things like that, and develop bespoke packages from anything from 8 weeks to 1 year, working with individuals and small groups and having a collective of trusted future employers potentially to feed into, look, what are you missing with your candidates? Is it always the same things that they're short of? So we'll build that in for you. And then hopefully in the future, when this takes off and it works, there'll be a couple of successful people that go through us and then gain employment. Then that once that level of trust is there, they're only going to send us good people, and everything that we've said we need, they've embedded that into the training of whatever length of time that is. But at the very least, it'll mitigate the risk because they'll have something very recent on the CV and not something from 2008 or 2015. They'll have, say, in 2024, 25, they'll have worked at Diego's Joints for 6 months and have a glowing reference of something quite recent. And again, transferable skills, it doesn't have to be to go into something hospitality. We've had people on Media Savvy courses that have been highly digital, do nursing degrees, plumbing apprenticeships, gone to work in totally separate sectors and areas, but it's those core skills. Like, it's overused a lot of the time, but those softer skills, they can't be overhyped, really. Just punctuality, communication, just presentation, all of these things, we kind of embed that and nurture that, and that's a lot of employees want that. And then in terms of the specific skills to what that industry is or that job role might be, they can teach that. Oftentimes, obviously, we all know that employees don't want a new employee coming that's been to a rival, because they might have what they perceive as bad habits because they do things differently. So there's the pros and cons for all of this, but yeah, that was supposed to be a shorter version, but that's kind of
it sounds amazing. And I think as a model, it's something that we've seen work really, really well in other organizations. So it sounds like a really exciting future for Diego's Joint there and Media Savvy. So I want to finish then with one final question to you, and that is, what has been the biggest lesson for you, or what is the one piece of advice that you would like to share with our audience today?
Yeah,
just one.
If I'm talking about lessons, I'll be here for like an hour probably, and I don't know what the biggest one would be. But the advice would be, you probably, if you ask this question a lot on the podcast, Kate, you probably get the same answers. But you absolutely, number one, you've got to be super resilient in this game, and but alongside that, you've got to work really hard. You've got to be determined. You've got to have self-belief. You've got to have all these things. But if you don't have a thick skin, because you will get, I mean, unless I've met anyone that could be classed as a social entrepreneur or working in the third sector that's not been kicked back and down time and time and time again. You've got to keep getting back up and coming back stronger. That's the only, and if you don't, then you'll be gone, and then you might be just in some job that you never really had a passion for, but it's the easier outcome. So you've got to be super resilient, in my opinion, and just from lots of having to draw on that myself. So if it's something that you can sort of teach yourself to a certain degree, but generally, if you are somebody that is easily knocked back and offended, and you've potentially got quite a thin skin, then consider a different career, or a
It's
different.
a fair point.
You don't want to just feel like you've wasted loads of time on trying to develop something where you were never realistically gonna succeed. But maybe you can succeed in helping a similar cause to what you might be interested in, but as a volunteer, or as an employee, or as a number two or something, but without the stress and the pressures that it takes to be the one that's driving it forward from just the idea. So
I would
yeah.
agree with that. And we all need really good staff, as social entrepreneurs, as charities, as purpose-led businesses. There are lots of opportunities out there for you to still do good, but not necessarily lead from the front if it isn't something that's going to be healthy or beneficial, or that you thrive on the fight to get the change that you're wanting to see. So yeah, I think that's some really, really wise advice to conclude our chat. So thank you ever so much, Dan. I've really loved listening to your story in terms of setting up these two amazing social enterprises. And I think that Sunderland is so much the richer for having you guys there. So we're going to be sharing the links and all that kind of stuff about both social enterprises. So please make sure everyone you're connecting with Dan and check out his social enterprises. But yeah, till next time. Thanks ever so much, Dan.
Thanks, Kate. Been a pleasure.
Oh, I could absolutely talk to Dan all day. So Dan has got over 15 years experience of running kicks, and that's involved taking on staff, winning contracts, getting training accredited, taking on a building and getting that all renovated, moving into a completely different sector. So understanding how to run a bar and a cafe, accessing grants, and the list goes on and on. So it was quite difficult really to kind of pick which parts of Dan's experience that we could take the most from. I think my favourite part from Dan's interview was, I think, his superpower that was a mixture of both resilience and drive. So being able to really understand his own strengths and prime working conditions as a juggler, rather than it being one clear, same, repeat activity. Instead, he's created these two brilliant organisations that allow him to see how he feels on a day-to-day basis and adjust his work focus based on what's going to mean that he's most productive. So this is something I think that we could all potentially learn from, even within the same organisation, creating space to be able to be responsive to our high and low energy and our focused and creative moods. I think it's a really, really interesting idea. So I love the fact that Dan has been able to create these two wonderful organisations based on his own strengths as someone that is able to maneuver very quickly across different programs, different ideas, different activities. So I hope that you've really enjoyed that interview. Please do connect with Dan and his social ventures. And don't forget to subscribe to Chats with Changemakers to be notified of more brilliant interviews like this. Catch you next time. Thank you for joining today's chat. If you'd like to be featured on the next series, please email hello@junctionpoint.co.uk. Speak to you soon.